Okay, here we are. Another pretty major milestone for me on this Crazy Dad Lotus. So we're wrapping up the brake line installation and problem solving, which, as you can see, has been a pretty major job here. I've talked about it being a jigsaw puzzle all along, and that's really what it turned out to be. But we got her together, so let's show you some of the problems that I've solved since the last video. Back here on the back, we had all the lines running up to this junction. So we had this line right here running up from the driver's side wheel, and this line running up from the passenger side wheel. And what we didn't have was going from here up to the front of the car and the master cylinder. So I was able to pull some of the lines. You've seen that I had at least 3 different main lines here. So I pulled one of those lines apart at this junction right here, and it pretty much fit the frame the way that I needed it to right up here. So first I got it shoved in to the hole right here. I had to build a grommet there, which I'm sure in this light you're not going to see well. I had to make a grommet out of rubber because of the repairs that I'd done on this cross member were too thick. But I shoved that through, and it was kind of coming out straight at that point, because I think that's what they've done, is straighten it out to take it out of that hole in the frame down there. So, but I got it shoved through, and I actually shoved it through until this preformed curve right here lined up exactly where it needed to be, and I used that for my main reference point, because I had this curve here formed and this was mostly formed up there, and so I used that for my reference point and came up here and got it fastened in place, and then was able to just bend this line and run it straight into the rear wheel part of the master cylinder. And so that got me going to the back. And then I actually found this line was on one of the brake servos, the brake boosters, vacuum boosters. It was a line coming off of that. And since I wasn't using that booster down there now, I grabbed the line off of it, and it had the right fittings. It's got 2 different fittings on one on each end, and it fortunately worked out just perfect here, so I had to rebend that and hook it up. So now I've got hooked up there, going out to my front brake lines on that side and that side, and that kind of got the bulk of it done. What that left me with then was I needed to find a way to connect to this union right here with this T-block. And so I originally started out I had plenty of line here, but I had to find a piece with the right fittings on it and everything. Then went over to the auto parts store and rented a double flaring tool from them. And what I found out was, for whatever reason, that older brake line that was original on this car did not want to flare. It just was really hard to do, and I ruined a couple of pieces of it. And so finally I threw up my arms and went and got myself 3 short chunks of this. And it ended up that the fittings that came on them didn't fit either end, but I had to get the right flare on this end, and this end's a double flare, this end's a cone-shaped flare. So I bought a line that had cone-shaped flare, cut one end off, pulled both fittings off of it, and then put my old fittings back on here and double flared this end to get these things to attach properly. So that solved my problem there. And then up here on the front calipers, there's a little piece of hard line right there, and those lines were rusted so bad that I didn't think I could salvage them. So that's where my other 2 pieces of brake line went. And again, I had to cut the ends off of them and reuse the ends that I had after I cleaned them up. But after some serious bending there and getting those reflared, now I've got both of my front brake calipers hooked up. And that's kind of where I'm at. This thing, the frame had these tabs. They're fold-over tabs that were hanging down here before, and they're supposed to just fold over that brake line, but I want to protect it a little, so I took a piece of vacuum hose and slid it lengthwise and slid it over the brake line in those places, and so I've got those there. That'll protect me nice and solid. And then these are some brake line clips that came with the parts for the car, so I put them on there. Got clips holding everything on now. There's a couple of clips going down these trailing arms, going around this V-bend that goes over the other side, and then I got a couple more on the trailing arms down there. And did a little adjustment here. Got my brake hub, brake drum back onto this side, and so we're there. I now have a brake system after all of that fiddling around with things. Now obviously I still have to connect the emergency brake cables. They go here and run up somewhere in there, so I got to figure that part out. And I'm going to ultimately have to rebuild my calipers and my brake master cylinder and my rear wheel cylinders, because I haven't done that yet. I just wanted to get the project pieced together. So I'll do that. I still don't have my disc brake pads in there yet. They're sitting over on the shelf over there by the green slime. But I'm there. I now have a completely sealed hydraulic system that's back where it's supposed to be, and I can move on to the next piece. And just that today, what I've outlined on this video was a full day's project. I've been at it pretty solid all day, piecing these things together and getting those parts bent, and had some faux pas. Went to the one part store and rented their double flaring tool, got it back here, and it was ruined and it wouldn't work properly, so I had to pack it all the way back up and go back to the parts store. They didn't have one, so I got my money back, went to the other store, and they rented me a brand spanking new one, so I didn't have any problems with it. Did that, like I said, had to make the trip to the store and buy 13 bucks worth of brake lines, but we are set. We're functional now, and I'm all back together, and I'm excited about that. So there you have it. We've got the Crazy Dad Lotus is almost back. Actually, it is back to where we could throw the wheels on it right now if we wanted to, and set the thing down on the ground. But it's so low that I want to keep it up on my sawhorses so I can keep working on it. And then the next installment, I will get these radiator cooling tubes put back through the middle of the chassis, and we'll work on getting the shifter linkage put in there. And I think at that point, we'll be ready to move on to the body, which will start getting even more fun. So there we have it. The Crazy Dad Lotus is rising from the dust after probably, I'm guessing, 10 to 15 years of being torn down and sitting in my buddy Dan's garage in his storage room and everything else. The thing's starting to come back together, and we are going to have us a fun little car.